Hey, just here with Chris Wright from Thinciers. Chris is going to take us through some of his deals that he's done with people. Chris is a finance broker, writes various different loan sizes. So Chris, you're going to give us some examples on some smaller deals and then a larger deal that you have done the finance for. So I will hand it over to you to take the floor.
Thanks. You can see that screen okay, I'm assuming?
Yeah, that's fine. Looks good. Yep. You've got some overgrown grass with a for sale sign.
Yeah. So this was an off-market opportunity. One of our, well, it was actually a new client who was referred to us by an existing client. They were in the middle of a townhouse development in Mitchelton, and this off-market opportunity came up from a buyer's agent, and they could obviously see the value at that purchase price, but were really stretched in terms of how much cash they had available. They'd used all their cash in the Mitchelton project, and they virtually had nothing else to put in to this purchase, but knew it was under market significantly, and so they approached us to see what we could do. So it was probably towards the back end of last year, around October. We settled. We gave them, what was it, 92% based on purchase price alone, which if you were going to a residential home loan lender, 92% is right up there, and that's including LMI. So there's a fairly large risk premium on there if they would do it all together. The house was run down. There was no tenant in place. It was a deceased estate, and the house needed work to get it to a point where it could be rentable. So there was no income there.
Which one is it, Chris? It's the one on the corner down the bottom, is that right? And there's
right, yeah, heavily treed.
Two blocks of land that they're split off.
No, so this was just really a very simple project. This is the one on the corner here.
Yeah.
So essentially all we did was take some third mortgages behind other lenders on the Mitchelton project. We took a first mortgage on Rana Hills. We matched them up with a local Brisbane lender who we'd done multiple deals with, who loves lending in their hometown. So they came out, checked out the property, agreed that generally it was possibly under market at that purchase price. So they were willing to lend the borrower some money.
Yeah.
As soon as they settled, they had it back on the market. They cleaned up the yard slightly, but did nothing cosmetic or any sort of renovation to the house at all, and put it straight back on the market.
Oh, right. So they didn't actually do any development?
No development whatsoever. They were looking at splitting or putting duplexes on there, but the market had moved that much. They effectively made $200,000 in 4 months.
Yeah, wow. So bought it well, cleaned it up a bit, put it back on the market and sold it.
Correct. Yep. So after stamp duties, our fee and interest, all costs done and dusted, there was a significant profit there for a 4-month turnaround.
Wow, awesome. So just to ask you about the financing, can you put some real numbers to this? What did they?
Yeah, sure.
What did they 92%?
Well, they bought the property for $670.
Yeah.
So we lent them 92% of that value. Sorry, I don't have the loan amount in front of me, but that'd be roughly $600,000.
A grand,
yeah. Something like that.
So they had to put in $70,000 plus stamp duty. Is that right?
Well, effectively, what we did is use the equity in the other properties. So.
So they didn't even have to put in the other 8%.
They put a deposit down and paid for the building and pest effectively.
Yeah, wow.
So
Awesome.
It was a very good deal. So we charged, or the lender charged 18% on that money. So it sounds like a big number, but the quantum over a short period of time, I think it added up to about $30,000. So
Yeah.
if you were to do a joint venture with somebody, and we see joint venture with money partner style investments going around, where the money partner puts in everything, and the developer or the sponsor takes 50% of the profit at the end of it. Well, this one, we reckon it was around about 90% profit to the developer and 10% profit to the lender.
Wow.
In terms of
so the lender still got a good deal, like a very good deal.
Yep.
With 18%
short-term
interest rate.
In and out.
Yep. And they also weren't tied to the developer, and the developer wasn't tied to them, other than they lent the money and that was it. So
that's it. So
no marriage, really well, no joint venture arrangement where people fight and potentially, not always.
Yep.
Happen.
And disagree on the path forward. This one you could have easily completed a duplex or triplex or small townhouse development, but what's the point if you could make quite a bit of money on a good return very quickly? You could struggle there for 12 months to build the project and develop it and get your DA, and maybe even longer than 12 months. Mm-hmm. And so what was your return on investment for that period? It wouldn't have been as high as this.
It's sometimes better just to get in and out.
That's right. A huge cost in property development. And if to be fair, if it took longer to sell in this situation, it's only hurting the developer's bottom line.
Yes. Yeah.
In terms of holding costs. So this one worked well. I think it was possibly more the market timing than anything else, but he also bought well in an off-market situation.
Yeah. So what would have happened if you didn't fund it? Could he have?
He couldn't have bought the property. He'd been to other brokers and they said, we can't help you. The banks wouldn't help him. He'd been sort of unemployed for a period while he was doing some other projects, and so his income was inconsistent. Had a marriage bust up, so there was limited sort of cash.
Oh yeah, must have been a hard sell to someone to fund it. So there's limited income, marriage breakup.
If I'm a banker, I'm saying no to that one, right? Because the policies and procedures you'd have to go through the bank to get that approved, it'd never happen.
Yeah. So it'd probably take more than 4 months to get it approved through a bank, right? if you could at all. Whereas he's already in and out.
Well, and that was the thing, because it was a market contract. It had to be a quick settlement, deceased estate, and they couldn't muck around with extending or letting them go to the market, because as soon as they go to the market, they'd realise that they were selling at unders and possibly could get money. So we had to move quickly, and we met with the borrower and got some degree of comfort that he knew what he was doing, and we also did our research to make sure that the property was good buying.
Yeah, okay.
So the lender did inspection, we were comfortable.
So it sounds like a good deal. He makes a couple $100,000. Your lender makes 18%. He sells it out in 4 months. So pretty good deal all around by the sounds.
Yeah, that was. And as I said, I think there's a little bit of a timing play there. He hit the good time of the market, but Brisbane's still charging along. So
yes, it is.
It'll be interesting to see what the buyer of the property did to it, if they decided to renovate or develop it. So we'll keep an eye on that just for future interest.
Okay, so that's the first one you wanted to share.
Yep. Sure. Another one, it's probably a similar situation, but it's in Balimba, and they actually did go through a split situation. So you can see here there was an existing house on lot 1.
Yeah.
There were 2 lots of land already, but as you can see, I don't know, the garage, I guess, it was on lot 2. So
this looks like a nice easy split.
Little splitter, yeah, you'd think so. They didn't raise the property, the house at all. All they did was remove the garage.
Yeah.
This component here on lot 2, and so this one, I guess, was you can see here, this is the photo after they've split or taken the garage down, demolished the concrete slab that was on the site, and cleared it ready.
Yeah.
So sorry, I probably should just go back a step. So these guys, again, didn't have a lot of equity put into this purchase. The initial purchase price was $1,050,000 for a double block in Balimba.
That's super cheap.
Yeah, going back October 19.
Okay. So it's older market pricing.
Older market pricing, that's right. So effectively, he sold the house for 1.45 in February.
Sorry, you just cut out for a sec then. So he bought it for $1,050,000, sold the house for 1.45.
Yep, the house for 1.45 in February 22, and as soon as he'd demoed and brought services into lot 2, he sold that in April 21 last year for $785. So his purchase price was $1,050,000. His net realisable was 2.235. Probably spent about $170,000 on costs, professional fees, an internal renovation of the house.
Wow, is that all?
Kitchen.
Did that include stamp duty, holding costs?
No. So stamp duty, fees, and interest are all added, were separate.
Okay, on top
so that added up to around about another 200,000.
Okay,
stamp duty.
More than the actual cost.
Yeah,
more than the actual cost, which is what it normally is, right? All those things you can't see end up costing more.
That's right. So stamp duty alone was 50 grand. There were fees on the loan establishment, and then because it didn't go quite according to plan from a time perspective, we had to extend the loan a couple of times. What we did here was quite creative, though, in that we charged him a higher interest rate initially when the risk was higher, and then when the land at the rear was sold, we reduced the loan amount, but also reduced the interest rate we were charging because the risk became lower. So we like to price to risk, and when the risk is substantially lower, we think that's the time to decrease the interest rate for the lender. So we negotiated all that, negotiated the extension. You can see here's the photo of the house on completion. They put a new fence, cleaned up the pool, rear fence, painted exterior, didn't put a new roof on. I sort of thought maybe they could just lift it so that underneath is all built in, maybe with a double carport, but they decided not to do that. And I guess the proof's in the pudding. They made enough money out of it to substantiate. So it doesn't have a carport there, you can see out the front.
So they sold it without a garage?
With no garage for 1.45 million.
Yeah, wow.
On a really busy road, right? So it was a good result. So effectively, 110% gain after 15 months, but a lot of that, well, not a lot. Essentially, they made 750 to 800,000 on this project after the fees and interest.
Wow.
So again, bought very well at the right time, October 2019. If anything, the fact that it took them longer
actually worked in their favour.
Actually helped, yeah. So if I was trying to sell this house, we look back at the original, feasibility that we were presented, and they were expecting 950 to $1 million for the house, So the market's moved 400,000 to 500,000 in that
Yeah.
time.
So they were expecting to make what, 400,000 originally?
Roughly,
So,
yeah.
Which
the time cost burnt them a little bit in interest,
yeah.
but the market conditions moved in their favour to well and truly offset that.
Yeah. So I mean, it started off as a good deal to start with. There was money in it. They weren't going to do this and make no money, which
Yeah,
I see plenty of. I see plenty of deals people do and there's no money that they've made. So they're at least going to make what, 400 grand, and they end up making double that because of the market.
Correct. Yeah.
So good on them.
Yeah. So if we're looking at a joint venture style arrangement, in this case, the developers made, let's call it 800,000, and there was around about 180,000 in interest. So call it 200. It was an 80-20 style profit share, if you want to equate it back to those simplistic profit share numbers.
Yeah. So can I ask, how did they fund this originally? You said it was higher risk at the start. How did they fund it originally, or I suppose the whole way through?
Well, again,
settlement and then for the construction costs and all the other costs. How did they fund that money?
We matched it with a local lender in Brisbane who understands the market. They could see the relative value at $1.05 million for a splitter. So they lent them probably, what are we? This was around about 85% to start with. So they put in around about 150 to 200,000 of their own cash into the deal. And we gave them a facility for 850 or a little bit more, including interest and capitalised.
So they bought it. So they got a loan for 850 grand. They came up with the other 200-ish. And then what about the cost to do the split? How was that money? How did they come up with that money?
So we set aside a small construction facility for there was about $200,000 there to cover the renovation costs, the headworks, DA, op works, splitting costs. And so we progressively drew that down over a period of 6 or 7 months. So the developer submitted invoices. We verified that cost had been expensed, and we submit it to the lender, and the lender reimburses the borrower for those costs. So they never had to come up.
They didn't have to come up with that money.
No.
So
we funded it.
Well, okay, awesome. And can I ask, what was the interest rate? What do they have to pay for all of this?
Good question, Adam. So it started at it was 16% initially. Yep. So quite high.
Wow,
until
really
they
high?
did
Yes.
Yep. Until they did the land subdivision at the rear, and then it dropped down to 11%.
What was the last figure? 11.
11.
Yeah. Okay. So I mean, 11's still high, but overall, they only had to put in 200,000. Is that right?
Correct.
They didn't have to put it. So they put in 200,000. They were set to make 400,000 originally. So they were going to double their original amount of money as the return over what, say 18 months. They were probably looking at doing that in 18 months or something.
Yeah, well, probably quicker. To be fair, it was only planned to be a 12 to 15 month.
Okay. So 12 months. So they were going to put in 200, make 400 on top of the 200 in 12 months. That was the original plan. What ended up happening is it took 2.5 years. They still made 200 and they make 800 on top of their 200.
Correct.
So if
they'd done that,
sorry, go.
Yeah, if they did it quicker, they would have probably halved their interest cost and potentially saved another $80,000. However, it would have delivered the project in a slightly weaker market.
Yes.
So you may not have got the 1.45 for the house at that point. So possibly not the best example again, because we're relying on market forces, but it was still a very creative way of funding the project, in that
Yeah.
We did first and second mortgage, and we provided construction funding to complete the renovation.
Yeah, so it just goes to show you, or for people that aren't used to this type of funding, how little money you actually need to put into a deal is more so what I want to highlight. So this person's put in 200 grand, they've made 800 grand, it's taken them a couple of years. Yes, they've had the market increase and all that stuff, but even if they didn't have the market increase and it went even not according to plan, if they only made 200,000, they still would have doubled their original money, and they would have done it in a couple of years if it didn't go according to plan. So, I mean, it does help that they picked a good deal. It's in Balimba. It is in a good suburb, and it was an easy, just from your photos, like that's an easy development. It's already on a corner. It's already on 2 lots. They had to do minimal work to get that lot 2.
Yep, they just cut down this tree at the rear and remove that concrete slab. And
is that what that is? Yeah, gotcha. Yeah, so there wasn't really much to do to get to lot 2. Just demolish that stuff.
That's right. And I think he sold that possibly 50 grand more than what they were expecting.
Yeah, okay.
In the original feasibility. So that reduced the exposure down and reduced the gearing level. So the interest rate came down.
Yeah, okay. So yeah, I mean, for a lot of people looking at doing something smaller, which a lot of like first-time developers are, a lot of people have equity sitting in other properties, which for especially the guys in Sydney and Melbourne, 200 grand of equity is really not very much. For those guys that are starting with nothing, if you don't have the 200,000, and this is me saying this off the record, Chris, block your ears. But if you didn't even have the 200,000, you could still have a money partner put that in as well. If you literally were starting from zero, and even if you offered your money partner, 50-50 in the deal, and they put up all of that 200,000, it'd be an awesome deal for you to get across the line.
Yeah, that's right. And Adam, to be honest, we don't always ask that question, but I suggest it wasn't just his money. There might have been a few other friends or family involved.
Oh, there you go.
Too.
Yeah, cool. Oh, that's nice that this guy or lady did this good deal and it worked out for them. Yeah. Awesome. And if guys are doing their own development, they're okay to contact you directly or your office and get some insight from you about how they can finance their own deals. That's okay? No
problems whatsoever, Adam.
All right. Awesome. Thanks so much, Chris. Really appreciate it.